Yeah, so welcome to our AMA tonight. We have a very, very, very special guest, Alexis Carr, and she started on Career Karma back in February of 2019, so less than a year ago. And she has a really interesting story of what she did before Career Karma, why she decided to break into tech, and even how she found us. And today, um, Alexis, she's a software engineer at Eventbrite. I'm not sure if Alexis started her job yet or not, but she recently accepted her offer 2 weeks ago. And as soon as that happened, I reached out to Alexis and I asked her to join you because she literally was in your shoes. And Alexis, I'm sure you've been to AMAs just like this one, where you were listening to our guests and you were asking questions. And now the tables are reversed. You are our guest, and now our community members get to ask you for advice. And so without further ado, I just want to welcome Alexis, our guest today. And I just want to say welcome, Alexis. Can you
Thank
can
you.
you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Awesome.
Waves.
Yeah. And I know for a lot of you, this is unnatural being in front of 40 people on an AMA. But I also want to say again that I appreciate Alexis stepping outside her comfort zone and sharing her advice, because this will really help other people figure out their own paths and their own personal journeys. So Alexis, before we dive deep into kind of what you did after Career Karma during your boot camp, can you share with the folks how did you find Career Karma, and take us back to February of 2019 and share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself?
Okay. Well, as Timur said, I'm Alexis. Actually, before my story's a little strange. I was actually a PhD student at the beginning of this year. But I realized I didn't want to be a scientist and I wanted to be an engineer. So I left my PhD program and I was looking for kind of like data analysis jobs because, being a PhD student, you have to work with a lot of data. And I had some skills of doing kind of like data analytics stuff, nothing like data science and all the crazy stuff that some of you guys will be learning at your boot camp, so just a little bit of stuff, but nothing was hitting. And I don't even remember exactly how this happened, but I found myself looking for boot camps to do web development. Um, I don't remember exactly when that switch flipped, but I was looking at a school in California called Holberton, which is a really awesome school, but their program is 2 years long, and I wanted a job relatively quickly. So I guess I'm skipping. Sorry, I'm a little nervous,
No
but
worries.
okay.
You're doing
But
great.
pretty much what happened, I was applying to Holberton, and part of their application process was they required students to have a Twitter account, which I did not have before this year started.
Yeah.
So I signed up for Twitter, followed Holberton, then Career Karma like sent me a DM like, "Hey, do you want to get a job in tech?" And I'm like, "Why are they messaging me? Who are these people?" But I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I went to one of their like information sessions. I had a phone call with Ruben about like what I wanted to do, and then I got started with Career Karma and did the 21-day challenge. Um, but I guess like what Career Karma really, really helped me out. I was really very, very stubborn with wanting to go to Holberton and like move to San Francisco, but I got into their boot camp. But like I said, it was a 2-year thing. It was in San Francisco. There was no way, like no financial help at all. So Timur was like, "Hey, why don't you consider Lambda School?" And I'm like, "Why? I don't want to go to Lambda School." But eventually I um, decided to take a chance on Lambda School, and the rest is history. Lambda School is a
Yeah.
really incredible program.
Yeah, Alexis, and you're doing a great job. And it's crazy that I think I remember us having a phone call, and you were just you were just very nervous because it's a big decision to move to a new place. And I think a lot of people, they think the hardest thing on this journey is going to be learning how to code. But can people see me? Okay, yeah, yeah. But the hardest thing really is figuring out not just how to learn how to code and where you're going to learn how to code, but how you're going to pay for your living expenses. How are you going to get rid of all the distractions in your life so you can you can commit and learn, because with that enough time, I believe anyone can learn how to code. Just like everyone learns, who wants to learn how to do jujitsu, they become black belts. People who want to learn how to play the cello, with the right amount of time, they become musicians. But with coding, especially when you're an adult and you have bills to pay, some of you are taking care of kids, and it's not an easy journey. And that's why I think when I was speaking to Alexis, I was like, you're going to be moving to a new city, and you're going to have to figure out not just how you're going to be learning, but how you're going to pay for your rent, living expenses, all those things. And there's a lot of options out there. And you don't lose anything by speaking to multiple schools, right? And so at that point, I pretty much told Alexis what I told all of you. And what steps did you take next, Alexis? How did you interview with Lambda? Did you interview with other schools? And kind of what did you do to start their boot camp?
Pretty much what happened. So I did talk to some other schools. I talked to Rhythm. I don't think I talked to Flatiron, but I'm trying to remember all the other schools I talked to. I think you mentioned that one of the other boot camp members tweeted out a few boot camps to kind of ask, like, hey, I'm awesome. I'm thinking about going to all these boot camps. Which one should I go to? And she tweeted at all these boot camps, like 42, Rhythm, and they were pretty much kind of selling themselves to her.
Yeah.
So I stole that, and the schools I was interested in, Holberton, 42, Rhythm, and Lambda, I kind of tweeted at all of them, and then I ended up getting phone conversations with them that way. So, I mean, that's kind of what I did. I talked to Holberton, of course, a lot, trying to figure out things there, but eventually, as you guys know, I chose Lambda School because the thing about them is that a lot of boot camps, they have you pay up front, and their programs are usually full time. But before, when I was thinking about, hey, how am I going to live? How am I going to pay these bills? I'm fortunate that I'm single and no kids, but I have a pet tortoise. I got to feed him. I got to feed myself. So I was kind of freaking out about that. And there was another, after the 21-day challenge, there was another, what was it, 90-day CK goal?
We did 90-day CK goals.
Yeah. So I did that next after I decided, hey, I'm going to go to Lambda and do it part-time. But what pretty much happened, my goal for those 90 days was to find a part-time job or a full-time job so I can pay for, going to Lambda. So I reached out to Career Karma to ask them about just if they knew anybody who was maybe wanting to hire some remote people who would do maybe tech support or anything like that. I did talk to somebody. I think the company was called Checker, but I never heard back. I was on my way to getting a customer service, online customer service position. But fortunately, I got really lucky here. I was on Twitter, and Austin, the CEO of Lambda School, he tweeted hey, we're actually rolling out a pilot program for living stipends where you get $2,000 a month and you can do full time, and it's going to be great. And you can use the $2,000 however you want to pay for your housing, food, and all that other stuff. So 2 seconds, I was fortunate that I was on Twitter, and literally I saw the tweet after 40 seconds after he tweeted it. So as soon as I saw that, clicked on the link, applied right away for that. And I was fortunate to be one of the people chosen for that. So I was able to go to Lambda full time and, learn the web development stack. I'm not sure if they're going to roll that back out again, because I think he didn't know it was going to be that crazy. But when you think about it, it's being able to code, not having to pay anything up front, and we're going to pay you so you can really focus. That's a really big deal. So I think they're still kind of trying to work out the kinks so they can bring that back. But
and I remember it was back in April or May when Lambda did that experiment. What I love about the bootcamp space is there's a lot of startups, same how Career Comma is a startup. Most of the bootcamps, they weren't here 10 years ago, right? So a lot of them experiment, and income sharing allows bootcamps to help people get to their destination and not have to pay up front. And in some cases, these stipends literally provide that bridge of paying for your living expenses. I know Lambda doesn't do stipends anymore, but there is a number of other schools that have started offering them. And so if anyone's on the call, I see Courtney, she's saying that she said there's no stipends. To my knowledge, Thinkful is the only school now that does living stipends. Some other schools, they offer like a customer support job. But if you want to look at stipends, you can check out Thinkful. And it doesn't apply to every single city or state around the country, but you can inquire. That's why it's always good to speak to multiple schools. You might even get a scholarship too, as you're speaking to different schools. Awesome. So Alexis, real quick, so let's recap. So you were on Twitter, you joined Career Karma, you were deciding between different boot camps, and you landed on Lambda. I think do we have any people on the call who are attending Lambda now? If you are, just post in the chat. But how is a lot of people are wondering what the bootcamp experience is actually like. Can you share with people what a bootcamp experience is like? What does your day-to-day look like? And maybe compare it to how it's how is it different than traditional education?
Okay. It's very intense. It's pretty much when I went in, like, I was just telling everybody, I'm going to a boot camp, but I was treating it like a job. Like, I would tell people if they wanted to do something, I'm sorry, I'm still working. I pretty much called it my job because that's what it was for this year. But pretty much just the way Lambda looks, you're pretty much, so you have lecture in the morning, and then you work on your project all day, and then you have stand-up meetings, which is just to kind of explain a little bit about Lambda cohorts are maybe they're growing now since they've had this big marketing push, but I think my cohort was around 200 students. They break us up into what are called TL groups, TL being team lead. They kind of steal from the agile methodology that you'd see in industry, but pretty much it's you break the students into smaller groups. You'll have a student who decided to stop their studentship for a bit and help other students lead these small groups. So, and then, that's just kind of the unit, you kind of squads in Career Karma. They're pretty much the people that, you're learning with. You kind of see how they're doing as you go through the program. But pretty much going back to the day to day, you have lecture in the morning, you have project time in the afternoon. And then in the evening, you'll kind of meet with your TL group and you'll all go over the project. But I'm just kind of talking about the structure of a day, but during all that time, you're just really, really drinking in all this web development stuff through a fire hose. And I think boot camps do a really, really good job at that. They know how to distill what you need to know down to exactly what you need to know. And then the projects that they give you to help really help you cement that stuff in your mind. Mm-hmm. But compared to you guys know, I did the kind of the traditional path of school.
What were you studying for your PhD, just so if people are wondering?
Okay, I did medical science, which is a very kind of broad field. I started off doing biochemistry, biomaterials type stuff, and then towards the end, I was doing more kind of biomedical data science type stuff that was what kind of got me into coding at the beginning and why I decided to leave and do a boot camp.
Yeah.
But compared to that, I feel boot camps are definitely a lot more hands-on in school. And even just talking to my brother who did computer science proper, you learn a lot of theory, and then you have homework assignments, and this pace is way slower than a boot camp. I feel boot camps, they really, really, they're focused on hands-on learning and just really, really being practical instead of just kind of theoretical, do a homework assignment, take 2 weeks to do it, then come back. You learn a lot more, I think, in a boot camp than you would in maybe a regular school. You do learn awesome skills in university. You might, I guess learn how to analyze things, and you kind of grow as a person since you're stuck there for 4 years. But if you're stuck anywhere for 4 years, you're going to grow as a person. But just one thing I do want to bring up, because I know for me, I did suffer through a lot of impostor syndrome going through comparing myself to not PhD students, to computer science students. But one thing that really helped, so I'm actually still in College Station right now. I haven't moved to Tennessee for my new job, but I did a hackathon recently with some computer science students. So I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to know so much more than me. What am I going to be able to contribute? But they didn't know how to build anything. They came up with a project, and when it got down to it, I thought, like, I'll be nice and do the back end since they might not know Node, but they couldn't build anything. So I think in a way, bootcamp students do have an advantage over computer science students who don't take the time to like learn these web development technologies and how to actually take that knowledge, the theoretical stuff, and actually apply it to projects like bootcamp students do.
Yeah, awesome. And can you walk us a little bit through and we're going to unpack more as we open it up for the AMA, but just to kind of finish off your journey. So you were in Lambda, and when did you start? Like, did you start in May or back in April?
Yeah, I started on April 22nd.
Okay, nice. And what happened that led to you interviewing with Eventbrite? Did you interview with different companies? Like, what happened? What are the details about and the nitty gritty of your job search? And how did you land on Eventbrite?
Okay, so there was a lot of rejection, as I'm sure you guys know, with the job search. So I was going through the curriculum. I did apply for Capital One while I was still doing the curriculum, and did get past to their final round of interviews, but then they rejected me, which really crushed me. That was like my first, like, I guess, kind of real interview. But you can get really discouraged about getting rejected, or you can just like take that, like, okay, I think I know what I need to improve on, and just like really go ham after that. And that's what I did. So a lot of, or I think most boot camps have career services. I know that that Lambda does. So I was pretty much like in there, like every time they had office hours, I was in there. I was so annoying. Like, they all know my name now. But really just, I really just took advantage of the career services that Lambda had. And I also, I talked to Ruben a little bit ago on Twitter, and he sent me some stuff that Career Karma had on just like how to do cold outreach. And that's really when things blew up for me. So I, at the advice of a career coach, let Twitter know and let LinkedIn know, like, hey, I'm searching for a job. This is what I can do for you. I'm looking forward to hearing back from some of you guys. And just from that, I was able to get an interview with Amazon. They reached out to me on Twitter, or one of the teams reached out to me on Twitter. It's like, hey, we're hiring for this position. Do you want to interview with us? I'm like, yeah, I do. So that happens. I actually also got an interview.
It paid off. The Twitter account paid off in a big way, because that's how you found us. That's how you found some interviews.
Right. Twitter is actually just an amazing place. Like, I see people on there who say like, hey, I was laid off, I need a job. And then a whole bunch of Twitter, like dev Twitter, would jump and be like, hey, I'm hiring for this position. And then you'll see people get jobs on Twitter. It's crazy. Twitter's an awesome place. But so I got a lot of interviews, so I got the Amazon interview from Twitter, and then from LinkedIn, I got quite a few interviews. Like, it was really weird. So like, there was one week where I was like barely getting any. And then next week after I did that, I had 8 interviews that week, which was exhausting, but it was fun. But what else was I gonna say? Right. So I think I tweeted about that, and then Ruben reached out like, hey, I see you're hustling now. I'm like, yeah, I am. And he sent me something about cold outreach, which is just pretty much like kind of a way to reach out to like engineers at certain companies that you're interested in and be like, hey, I see that we have this in common.
Was it the 5 email template? Is that what you were using? Yeah.
Yep. That's actually how I was able to get an interview with Facebook.
Nice.
For whatever reason, some like engineering director wanted to connect with me. I noticed that he connected with a few Lambda students, but I don't think anyone that I know that reached out to him like that. So I took the template that you guys came up with, and I reached out to him that way. He's like, yeah, sure, let's have a conversation. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's nice. But I think I'm rambling a little bit. Sorry.
No, you're doing a great job. I think a lot of people think that after a coding bootcamp, you're going to get your interviews by applying online. But the reason Ruben even sent you the email templates is we always say that most jobs are not found online, they're found through referral. And at first it might sound discouraging for people who don't know anyone in tech, like most of you, if you're outside of tech. That's the chicken and the egg problem. Once you're in tech, you know everyone. Like, it becomes easier to know people. But when you're on the outside, it literally comes down to how proactive you are during and after your boot camp with reaching out to people on the inside who are also eager to help. They just don't know if you need help unless you actually ask them, you know? And so the templates, and I'll share the templates with all of you as well. It's basically a way to make the email sound personal. So when you're reaching out to another mom, you might say, hey, I know that you do research on them, but then you say, I know you're a leader of Moms Who Code. I'm a mom going to Lambda School or Flatiron, and I'm a developer. I have a portfolio of projects. Would love to ask you for a coffee or a phone call to find out how you became like who you are, you know? And the key is you do want to include something personal, so it shows them that you've done some research. So you might be a veteran, or you might find someone who went to the same school as you, or boot camp, you know? And that way you start initiating these conversations. And on the surface, it might seem like it was just by luck, but there's no luck in that. It's just hard work, hustle, and everyone on this AMA can do that. So yeah. So Alexa, so you mentioned you were reaching out, sending out these emails to Facebook, Amazon, and then what happened?
I got a lot of interviews. Like
Yeah.
I said, there was a week where I had 8, and the coolest thing was that most just putting yourself out there counts for a lot, because like the cold interview or the cold outreach got me the Facebook one, but most of the interviews that I got were people telling me to apply after they saw like what I posted on Twitter or LinkedIn, which I was actually kind of shocked. Like there's actually one engineer who's like, hey, your background looks kind of awesome. Let me recommend you to our recruiter, and we can get you through the pipeline that way. I'm like, people actually help each other out. I just thought that was so strange, because like people like in academia, like it's so competitive. Like you just, people don't help people out like that I see, or not on the internet. But I mean, that just like, yep, networking. But I mean, it kind of just goes to show you that this field is kind of like family. Like people want to help other people make it. I mean, there are like some of those like tech bros, whatever, who are like boot camp students or blah blah blah. But most people aren't like that. They want to help you, get a job and do what you have to do. I don't remember what the question was. I think I just
Yeah,
kind of
no,
rambled.
I think you're doing a great job. Can you share how you came across Eventbrite? Because that's the company that you're going to be working at. How did they come around?
Oh, actually, it's kind of funny. You say most jobs don't come from just applying online. I applied online for
Okay,
those. I was
yeah. So
strategic about that though, because after getting rejected from Capital One, I think they were just wanting people who had a computer science degree, which I was lacking, even though I had, other education. They whatever, but I'm still a little salty, so but I went ahead and I like Googled, companies that are fine with bootcamp graduates, and Eventbrite was on one of the lists I found. So I applied to all those companies on that list, and I actually didn't think I was going to hear back from Eventbrite, but then, I got the interview, and after that, I just made sure that I really, really studied everything that I needed to make sure I did well, and
yeah.
was just a good
Okay.
fit.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect segue to open it for our community to ask you questions. Um, I know there's like some banter going on in the chat. I just want to say that like everyone has for everyone who gets a job on the outside, it might seem like it was easy, but I can guarantee you that every single one of us had to overcome challenges to get to where we are today. And the whole point of Career Karma and what we stand for is supporting one another, and we want to encourage one another, because this is not like me against you. It's like us helping each other to break in, because there's enough jobs for everyone. So on that note, I'd love to open it up for questions. When people ask questions, please introduce yourself and maybe mention how long you've been with Career Karma. And please also ask questions on topic related to the job search, coding, or anything related to that. Cool. Who wants to jump in and go first?
I have a quick question
Yeah.
I can ask. Alexis, I just wanted to ask you, when it comes to Lambda, did you go to the online program or were you on campus?
Oh, Lambda is completely online, so.
Oh, so you attended the online. Okay, great. And then, I don't know if you answered this before, but like, did you find it tough, and how was it, like, kind of just learning on your own and doing something that, because I guess because you come from academia, coding was like brand new to you. So how did you find that, like, learning everything and applying it and like immersing yourself in it?
I thought, I mean, it's really difficult. You're pretty much like just dedicating your life for a few months to just really, really going hard and learning all this stuff. And I didn't think it was easy by any means. I did before. It was I'm a little extra when it comes to stuff. So when I get really excited about stuff, I try to teach myself things to like prepare. I guess kind of front load, so I'm prepared. So I did teach myself like HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript before I started. I think Career Karma actually had like a few like workshops for that as well, and I went to a few of those. But you can't. I guess like you guys will see when you guys get there, but like for me, like learning React, which is kind of like the kind of, I guess you guys will see what front end is when you guys get there. But that was really, really difficult for me. And I did mention imposter syndrome before, and I just really felt like a lot of the time that tech wasn't for me because I just wasn't getting it. So it does get hard, but it's just kind of a matter of remembering who you are, why you want to do this, and just pushing yourself and relying on kind of like leaning on the people who are going through this journey with you.
Yeah. And how many hours, like, a day did you like allot to just studying and like learning everything?
Well, for Lambda, like just like the time where we had to be there was from like 10 a.m. to maybe like 6 or 7 when we had like our stand-ups end. And then we also had after hours twice a week where one of the kind of student TAs would like kind of like go over some of the stuff that we learned again. And I went to all of those. So I was spending quite a bit of time. Like I said earlier, I made this my job.
Nice. But with the 10 to 6, did you just have to sit there in front of the computer, just like reading?
No. So I think if I'm remembering correctly, 10 to 11 was kind of like where we would go over what's called the training kit, which is kind of like they would have like kind of like videos that you would watch before attending lecture and then just reading through.
It's 8:30.
So there was that, and then we had a lecture from 11 to 1 my time. I'm in Texas, so Central. And then for the project time, I use what's called the Pomodoro technique, where I would sit down and code for 25 minutes or try to work on something for 25 minutes, and I would get up for 5 minutes and walk around, or 15 minutes when it was time for the longer break. So I wasn't sitting there the whole time. And if I got frustrated, I would walk away for longer periods of time. Awesome. But you don't have to sit there like just staring at the computer because that's not realistic.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, that's great.
Hello.
Hello.
I am currently attending Lambda School. I started in July, and I started with Career Karma in May, so not too far after you, but how did you survive React and Redux? I'm like currently in the trenches. How did you survive learning these things? Like, was there anything in particular during the curriculum that was difficult for you, and how'd you get through it?
Yep. React and Redux for me, that was difficult. I actually, I was fortunate that I had that the Lambda School staff were like really, really supportive of students, because like when I got to that point, I was just like burnt out. I wasn't getting it. I wanted to quit. They're like, no, you're staying here. Like, just ask for help. ask for your, work with your peers. Just like, that's pretty much what I did. When I would get really, really frustrated, I would walk away and just like take some time to like vent to a friend or whatever. And then I would come back. But I think one thing that's really nice about Lambda School is that I know like when I was a TA, we set up what are called peer programming hours. So like students who maybe needed help or wanted to work with somebody, you could jump in there, get on a Zoom call with a student and kind of work on the problems together. I think that like definitely working with other people and kind of like being able to like bounce ideas off of each other when you guys are doing those projects is very helpful. So I would recommend that. And then definitely like you're in Lambda, so you know about the help channels. If you're not getting something, drop it in the help channel. Make sure that you're asking for help when you need it. Because, the whole philosophy of boot camps is that we're being really efficient. We're squeezing in like what some people take 4 years to learn into a couple of months. So it's also efficient not to let yourself stay stuck for too long, right? So when you are struggling, go ahead and ask for help from someone you think will be able to help you. Get them to tell you that, get unblocked, and then go back to doing it.
Thank you.
No problem. You got this. It's going to be really crazy because soon you're going to be in back end and you'll be like, wait, I was tripping over React for what now? And it's going to be easier for you to be like, okay, cool. I'm glad I went through that. And it's better now. So
Alexa,
trust the process.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to get away from Flexbox and all those other like front end stuff.
No, I feel you. I'm the same way. That's why I became a back end person. I don't like that, but.
Alexis, do you mind? I know some people join our community recently, so they may not even know what a backend or a front end, what it even means. Can you just explain from your view, what does it take to build an app? What do people mean when they say backend or front end, and maybe provide some examples?
Yeah, sure. So if we're thinking about kind of like, I guess, dividing an app up, let's just use Twitter as an example. I don't know how their app is set up. I'm just going to say stuff. It might not be exactly right, but pretty much the front end is everything that you can see on a website. So Twitter, all the tweets, people's profile images, how those look on the website, that would be what the front end is. So how that looks. So think about like how the website is designed, just like the little different like elements on a page. Like you guys might know a little bit of HTML. So like when you think about HTML, CSS, that stuff, that's what the front end is. And back end is pretty much like what makes the app work. So we have all these people on Twitter, right? How does Twitter know who's on Twitter? There's something called a database, which think about a database as kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, but a little bit more heavy duty. That like kind of maybe like has like, the name, like the username, the name, maybe like the description at the top of the page, their profile picture, and the database will have all that, and that's more of the back end. I mean, that's kind of a simplistic breakdown, but I mean that's just pretty much what it is. Like front end is all the stuff you can see, back end is all the stuff that you can't see but helps the app work.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. A great point. Cool. We have about 20 minutes left. Anybody else have any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask away.
Hi, my name is Shira, and I was interested as far as what questions were asked during your interview process. So did they give you scenarios and you had to actually code? I guess tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, as far as Lambda goes, the interview wasn't too bad. It kind of felt more like maybe it was kind of like I think from what I remember, it was a while ago. It was more like, tell me a little bit about yourself, why you want to code. So being able to know why you're jumping into this, completely wanting to change your career, you need to have a story about that. And then the other questions were pretty much just kind of like seeing if I was going to be able to commit. So since I was doing the full-time program, they're like, are you going to actually be able to commit every day from 10 to this time? And I said, yeah. So the interview wasn't too bad, but I know Lambda has what's called the Lambda Challenge, which is after you do the pre-course work, they want you to do kind of like a coding assessment. just off of the stuff that you learned. And I think for that one, I think we had a few times to take that one. I was fortunate was able to get through that one in the first one, but they prepare you to take that assessment by giving you the pre-coursework, which you can go through over the course of a few weeks after you interview, just before, as long as you have it done before the cohort that you're wanting to start with. I hope that answered your question.
What about your interview with Eventbrite? Did they ask you any questions around that?
Sorry. I thought you were talking about Lambda. Eventbrite, yeah. There was I had 3 rounds of interviews with them. So the first interview I had was with the engineering manager, who's going to be my boss. So that was a phone call. So it was kind of like, tell me about yourself, your kind of journey, like what brought you to where you are now. So I kind of went through what I went through in Lambda, and then I had a coding challenge on that call as well. I had coding challenges. So I had 3 rounds. I had one the first round, had another one the second round, and the third round was like a marathon interview, which went from 11:30 my time to 3. And I had 3 coding challenges on that one. So you definitely, for these interviews, you want to make sure that you're getting ready for those as well.
Can you give us an example of a coding challenge? Like, what kind of question would they ask you on a coding challenge?
Okay.
Or like, was it an algorithm question, or was it something like, hey, we want you to build like a quick widget on a page using React? Like, can you share some of those examples?
Okay, yeah. I've heard like some like startups on like the West Coast do things like kind of build a quick app.
Yeah.
Eventbrite actually is a West Coast company, but they moved to Nashville, or they have an office in Nashville now, but their questions were more algorithmic. So kind of like what you think of when you think whiteboarding.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think.
I can give some examples to people so they have an idea of what it could be. In some cases, and this is a simplified version, but they might say like write an algorithm to reverse an array or like a string. Let's say you have a sentence of 20 words and you have to reverse it, but they'll tell you you cannot use like a given method from the language. You have to build it by scratch. And so now you have to figure out a way to do it. And a lot of the time they want to see how you think. How do you approach breaking down a problem into smaller steps? And
Right.
Alexis, do you feel like your bootcamp prepared you for that, for those coding problems?
I think that they did. I mean, it wasn't just so Lambda. Lambda is online, and we pretty much live on a Slack channel.
Yeah.
Or live on a Slack workspace. But we had like some of our TAs, like when I was going through, they created a code challenges group where we meet once a week and just do code challenges together. So just kind of that helped me a lot. And then like some of the TAs that I had, or some of them, they would have us do code challenges while we had every day in our stand-up meetings, which is the meetings that we'd have at the end of the day after we kind of went through lecture in the project. So yeah, just kind of like making sure that you're doing a little bit of studying outside of just what you see every day, I think helped a lot. So like getting together with other students, like, hey, let's do these code challenges. They're hard, but we want to make sure that we're getting them down when we apply for jobs and everything.
Yeah.
And just like what you mentioned about kind of the sample question you gave, where you can't really use like tricks from the language. So I did in my final rounds, there was one question. I don't think I can say exactly what the question was, but they gave me a question and I'm like, oh, I can just solve this question with a for loop and a sync await, which is something about JavaScript that you guys will learn. So they gave me the question. I solved it in like 30 seconds because of that. Because I've seen a question similar to it before, like, nope, do it this way. And I didn't finish it the way that they wanted me to do it, but just me thinking out loud and saying, okay, I see what I need to do. And just kind of write, kind of thinking out loud when you're doing these helps a lot. So they can, even if you don't finish the question, they see that, okay, if given time, they probably would have finished this, and we can see how they think. So these interviews are not about like getting all the answers right. It's just kind of like showing them that you have really studied this stuff and know how to think as an engineer.
Yeah. Cool. We probably have room for three more questions. Anybody else wants to jump in?
Yeah, I had a question. How long do you think you were on the job hunt total after graduating from Lambda? And how much work were you doing for it during that job search? Like, how active were you in your job search? Like, was it every day sending emails and stuff like that, or?
Okay. This is going to be a plug for Lambda. I actually didn't finish Lambda's program. I got a job before finishing. So that actually happens with a lot of students in Lambda. They actually have a problem getting people all the way through the end of the curriculum because people get jobs before they finish. So as far as a job search goes, I was actually still doing my capstone project while doing the job search. But as far as that went, I was making sure I applied to at least 5 jobs every day. And then when I kind of got that cheat code of, sharing my resume and portfolio on Twitter and LinkedIn, it got a little bit easier after that when people were reaching out to me. But I feel like there was a last part of your question I think I'm not answering.
That was mostly it. Also, like, I guess, spending all day and whatnot. What was I gonna say? Wasn't part of it. I didn't say it yet. Now, where were you living? Like, how far did you relocate for the job you're taking? Because you said it's in Tennessee and whatnot. Like, did you apply all over and were willing to go where to relocate?
Yeah, I applied all over. I actually still haven't relocated. So I'm in College Station, Texas. It's kind of like a little bit outside of Houston. And I'm going to be going to Nashville. So that'll be next week for me. So it's going to be a little bit of a move. But one cool thing about a lot of these tech companies is engineers. I mean, I looked up recently, like, why do engineers make money like this anyway? Like, but it's because they can apply, or they can act. Well, I'm not going to answer that. But what I'm trying to say is that these companies actually like pay for you to help you relocate as well. So that won't be an issue. And I'm going to be moving next week.
Cool.
That's really great. I'm about to drop the templates that we shared with Alexis, and she was doing a lot. If you can, just to emphasize, she was on Twitter. She was writing emails to people like hiring managers, and I think the reason I want to emphasize is this might not be something you do now. There's a right time for everything. If you're just starting out, you want to just see if you even like this. So you might be on Grasshopper or SoloLearn, just getting it started. But once you're already attending a boot camp, depending if you do something full-time or part-time, there's no one to tell you can't start applying and start building those relationships earlier, and a lot of the time, if you can reach out to people, even the alumni of boot camps, before you even start the boot camp, just because you want to find out how their experience was, and you keep that person up to date as you're building projects and you're shooting them an email once a month, just like giving them an update, you actually get to build a relationship with that person so they emotionally feel invested in you. Let me mute it, folks. They feel emotionally invested. And what I mean by emotionally invested, if I'm a veteran and another veteran is reaching out to me and asking for advice, and I'm kind of helping them figure things out over the next 6 months, I'm now emotionally invested because I want this person to succeed, right? And so you can use that to your advantage, because if you have 6 months or you have 3 months before you graduate, now is actually the best time to start reaching out to people, because you don't actually want anything from them now. Now you just want to get their advice. And later you can ask, once you build that relationship, it's going to be a no-brainer. Once you already have a portfolio of projects, for them to just tell you, cool, like, send me your resume and I'll forward it to our like hiring manager.
Hey,
That's really what it comes down to.
hey, can I say something before?
Yeah.
I was just looking at some of the stuff in the chat, and someone did mention, you know, that it is kind of strange that we're interviewing someone who was a PhD student at the beginning of this year and that had, you know, a play in me getting my job. I've been hearing that a lot. But I can understand, and it probably did help me out a little bit with some positions. But I just want to emphasize that I do have friends who went through Lambda. One of them, I know 2 people for sure who weren't in the same position as me who are working at Twitter right now. I have people getting interviews or friends getting interviews at Amazon, Twilio, who have had none of the education that I had. So pretty much everything that I say, I do have a different background, but everything that I've said so far, like I was down in there with them learning how to code and stuff, and they were doing the same things that I'm doing. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that it probably didn't help that I had this education behind me, but you can still get an awesome job with a bootcamp education. So don't think that, I mean, I can understand where you're coming from with that, but there are people who've gone through like crazy life circumstances, like really having to change a job, who, like, I know one of my friends was about to be homeless, but he is getting interviews right now. So boot camps, I think, are a great equalizer. It doesn't matter where you came from, anyone can get these type jobs if you work hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it also comes down to is like it comes down to just hustle. You're a person who is in control of your own destiny, and there are literally 100,000 companies that need developers. That's just the world that we live in. And so bootcamp is kind of like a shortcut. At the end of the day, you're going to be taking this journey, and you have to figure out how you're going to pay your bills every month, where you're going to find the time from, and what you're going to do to reach out to companies and people who work there for you to get a shot at interviewing there. But at the end of the day, there's just so many companies out there that need developers, and it might change in 20 years. In 10 years, there might be another job that's in high demand. But today, data scientists, engineers, designers, people who know tech sales, those are hot positions. And if you have the skills, companies hire you based on what you can do. I think your prior experience, it does play a role and it helps you. But there's also people who don't have any coding experience at all, and they also break in. And my co-founders and I went for undergrad and I studied finance, and then I did a coding bootcamp and became a developer. And I got an undergrad in finance, and before that, I tried learning how to code 2 times, and I gave up. And so there's so many different paths to these roles, and I think the secret is that each one of you has already an advantage. You just haven't found it yet. So every single person on here has your advantage, and once you find what it is, you can lean on it. And sometimes you might even turn a disadvantage into advantage once you become aware of what it is. We have about 5 minutes left. Let's do so. Alexis, can you share some with people in terms of like salary ranges? Because I know there's a lot of numbers floating around. I'm not sure if you're comfortable sharing like the exact amount, but maybe you can give people ideas of salary ranges and maybe salary ranges of your friends from Lambda, so people start getting an idea of like what to expect after this journey.
Yeah. Well, salary ranges are, kind of all depend on where, you're working. I know when I was in the hire channel looking at some, just kind of like going through some things, there's someone who got hired in Oakland. And he said he got 120 a year, or he's getting 120 a year. Me personally, with base salary plus like my equity package and my sign-on bonus, it'll be 3 figures for this year and slightly less for next year. So, I mean, those are, then my friend, one of my friends, who I'm going to emphasize is a woman of color who didn't have any sort of education before this. She got hired a few months before I did, and she's going to be making like 90. So the salaries have been, that I've heard from the people that I've been talking to, have been pretty good.
Yeah. And again, it also comes down to you don't have to take the first offer that comes your way. Depending on, obviously, for some people, they need to get their first job and the first foot through the door, and then interview with more companies later, or like in a year or two from now. But it's a good position to be in. You know, when you decide if you want to accept an offer now or later, and how that will work out.
It's nice.
And as we're wrapping up, I know, Alexis, for you specifically, because when I reached out to you to invite you to the AMA, you were talking about kind of like the emotional kind of shock and the emotional, like the emotional feeling you went through after you got that offer. Can you share with people what it felt like when you actually received your offer?
Well, first when they called and were like, "Hey, we want you to work here," and I almost threw up. I was on my way back from an interview in town. They were interviewing me for like a kind of like a front end position, but I don't have a car, so I was Ubering back. So they called. I saw it was a Tennessee number. I picked up, answered, and I was like ugly crying in my Uber next to the driver. And she's like, "It's okay, calm down." I'm like, "No, it's not." But it's really crazy. Like when you think like, it's really crazy. Like when you think about where you started. So like April 22nd, I knew barely HTML, CSS. And to think that you can learn all of that stuff within a year, enough to convince a company like, "Hey, you should pay me to do this for you." It's really overwhelming. I think. Oh, Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is, I'll drop it in here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Instagram, I'm the Alexis Carr. Kind of goofy, but whatever. I'm not much of an Instagram person, so I don't remember what my Instagram is, but that's my Twitter.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to reach out to me on LinkedIn too, I would definitely be up for that. I'm Alexis J. Carr on LinkedIn.
Alexis, and thanks for sharing your info. And my last question is about the imposter syndrome. I think I always bring it up on these AMAs because even I can talk about it all day long, but once you feel it, it's very hard to overcome that. But at least you can become aware of it. So in your case, did you feel it along the way? And you might even feel it now. Can you share with people kind of the strategies you've used just to become aware and overcome the imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I actually wrote a few months ago, I wrote a Medium article about it, how I felt. I can share it to you, or I just drop it in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so there's the friend link, so you guys don't have to pay for anything. But I felt it really, really bad. Part of it too, I mean, it's just when you see people on like Instagram saying, or not Instagram, LinkedIn saying, like just saying how bootcamp graduates can't do anything, like they're not as good as CS majors, and then like you see like all the incredible things that people build when they're further on their journey than you, and you're comparing yourself to that, it gets really, really difficult. But I mean, I don't think for me that feeling is completely gone away, because I still kind of feel a little bit like, you know, I tricked them into hiring me, you know. But just, I think for me, what helps for that, there's Dan Abramov on Twitter. He's a big tech name. I'm forgetting why right now, because I'm nervous.
He created Redux.
Okay, so Redux guy, really, really, really smart guy, but he'll like tweet things like he doesn't know how to do something, and then somebody else will like answer. He's like, "Oh, okay, thanks." So just knowing that like you don't have to know everything all the time takes some of that pressure off, and just seeing like there are some people like that I knew who were like light years better than I was, who dealt with the same thing. So I don't know. It's just kind of like just knowing that other people go through it and you're not alone, and seeing that there's people who you think are just incredible who sometimes have to ask questions about things as well. It takes a little bit of the pressure off. And then just another thing, a lot of my imposter syndrome came from me comparing myself to people who were further along than I was.
Mhm.
Don't compare someone's day 60 to your day 1. That's just, I mean, it sounds logical and matter of fact, but when you're going through that, you have to remind yourself, like, hey, I just started coding like 2 seconds ago. Like, why am I tripping over this person who's been coding for 20 years? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Just only compare yourself to the person that you were yesterday. And if you're growing and you're better than who you were yesterday, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alexis. And there's a few people reaching out to me asking if they need any experience to be on Career Karma, or what they need to do. Career Karma is a place where you can find a study partner, you can find an accountability partner, you can just find other people who will help you discover and explore if this career is for you. That's why we take everyone, and we're just helping you all not just learn how to code, but realize your full potential, right? Because Alexis is not going to be, she's like, being an engineer doesn't define her. She's a person who likes solving problems, and then in the future she might be working with other people in the community building companies, or who knows what she's going to be doing. And use this opportunity to build these relationships amongst each other, because in 5 years you're gonna be connected to the largest network of people in tech in different cities and different states and different companies. And so it's gonna make your job and your life in tech a lot easier once you have our whole community behind you. So I want to say once again, Alexis, thank you so much. Let's give Alexis a round of applause, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of you. This is amazing.
Thank you.
And you did a great job explaining everything tonight. So I know you were nervous at first, but you did an amazing job. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are inspired by your journey.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Alexis, thank you so much. We'll definitely have you back in a few months once you're all settled in. And I just want to also thank everyone for joining tonight, especially our fam on the East Coast. I know it's late. And keep doing the 21-day challenge if you're just starting out. And I shared the template inside, and I'm going to share this template again of 5 emails. If you are not ready to send out these emails yet, just still click on the link so you have it. And if you do have it, just start sending out 1 email a day to someone that you come across on Twitter or LinkedIn, or even on the Career Karma, on the Breaking Into Startups podcast. Just start emailing people, and you'll see how much better you get and how many doors you'll open with that. So I want to thank you, everyone, and let's break in. Take care, everyone.